good speakers, and we're very grateful when they give up our time. We had to book someone else instead, but we generally try. It's very rare that we ask someone to come back twice to speak, and it's never been done that we've asked someone to come back 3 times. And I wouldn't admit to say that we've got favourites, but I would say James is definitely Premier League in this. And the reason is that every time he comes back with something fresh, something topical, something relevant, something interesting. No pressure, James.
Yeah,
But I think I've probably said in the email, this is a culmination, I think, of a lot of years of work and thinking from a bright lad who knows what he's talking about, and he's actually walked the walk, which is even more impressive. So I'm top gabbling, and I'll hand you over to James Butler.
I'm just going to enjoy that applause now because it might not come. Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words and building up pressure. Never before, as a species or as a society, have we had so many resources at our disposal, whether they be intellectual, financial, or material. Our forebears would be overwhelmed by the opportunity that we have in order to create the lives that we want. And yet, in 15 years of coaching businesses and going to networking events like this, it's amazing how many times I've seen people who are frustrated or unfulfilled or who aren't doing what it is that they want. And so, what I'm just going to explore this morning is some of the stuff that I've experienced through my 46 years on this planet. I know I look older, but it is 46 years. And some of the things I've learned from working with businesses over the last 15 years. Just about, perhaps, what might give you the choices to allow you to do what it is that you want. So my kind of ambition for the morning is to just share with you some of those things so you leave with at least one thing that will be useful for you moving forward, even if it's never to go to one of James's talks. A bit of kind of humility at the start. There's a very good book called Anything You Want by a guy called Derek Sivers, which Dave very kindly recommended to me not that long ago. And there's a quote in there that he starts at the beginning that says, "I am a student, not the guru." And I feel very much that's true for me. So whilst I'm going to present you mainly with the highlights of my 46 years rather than some of the failings, I don't want you to think that it's been all highlights. And I don't want you to think that I don't have similar kind of daily struggles about productivity and focus and procrastination and all the other things that everyone else faces. Okay? But I'm just not going to share with you my internet search habits. I'm going to share with you the things that work. I don't even share that with my wife. I've come to talks here for many years, and we've had Olympic rowers, we've had the first female world rally car driver, we've had people who've built very successful businesses, a guy who built his business around chocolate, which just sounds fantastic, and called his company Lick Me On Delicious, which I think is and they've all been very inspiring, and I'm none of those at all. The only thing that's really remarkable about me is that I am unremarkable, and so I'm not portraying my choices in life as things that you should choose. What I'm going to try and share with you is how I made those choices. So what I chose and why I chose them won't be so relevant, but it's how I made those choices, and so hopefully therefore you'll be able to learn from those. And I'm going to talk at a kind of a macro level in terms of kind of life stuff rather than day-to-day micro stuff like how do I organise my day and not procrastinate, things like that. If that becomes, hopefully some of the stuff that comes at that macro level is applicable to the micro level, if that's what you're particularly interested in. And if I still haven't answered something that's at a micro level at the end, then we have questions and answers and maybe we can cover it then. Okay. So, I'm going to start. I was born in 1971. Those people who do the maths will know that that's 46 years ago. Thanks to Google Street View, I can now show you where I was born. On a council estate in Wokingham in Berkshire. My father wasn't very good with money, so I grew up in a relatively impoverished household. And that becomes relevant when I talk about some other things. I just wanted to know that I wasn't really born with a silver spoon in my mouth. So my father wasn't very good at managing money until his dying day. And he was even worse at being a husband. So when I was 5 years old, my parents divorced, and then my mum was a single parent in the 70s, which was quite unusual, and also made it difficult to make ends meet. Didn't see my dad for very much for about 10 years after that. My mother was much better at managing money, although she didn't have much of it, but she was very bad at choosing husbands. So her second husband was not the best stepfather I could have asked for. I had quite a difficult childhood. And two things that emerged from that. One, in terms of the poverty, was that choices are a lot easier when you have financial resources behind you. It just opens up more stuff. So whether that be in life or business, if you have a reserve of cash, it just makes your choices broader. So that's something that I entered adult life, that I wanted to ensure that I followed my mother's example and put myself in a position where I had those choices. And the second thing was that I was the only person who was going to make any difference in my life. I couldn't leave it in the hands of other people because some of those hadn't done a very good job, and so therefore I wanted to be in control of the choices that I made and how my life transpired. And that's lived with me for the kind of 30 years since learning that. Okay. I'm also conscious, as I go through this morning, that I'm going to talk a lot about, I'm an absolute planning nutcase, so therefore a lot of this is about kind of thinking of the future and everything else, and orchestrating a path. However, luck plays an important part in this too, both good and bad, and I recognise that. And for me, one of the biggest strokes of luck I had is I moved to Newbury in Berkshire at the age of 16 to come and do my A-levels, and I met my now wife, Bev. So this is me with an extremely fashionable mullet. So there are a lot of people who are quite glad I now don't have hair, given that's what I chose to do with it in the 1990s. But this is me on my 19th birthday with my now wife Bev, and I am very conscious that the solidity of that relationship through my entire adult life was a big platform upon which I was able to build some of the things I've achieved. And the only thing I would possibly change about Bev is make her a little bit taller. Because we both had stiff necks for the whole of our 4 years marriage, and she's always looking up and I'm always looking down. Bless her. And you know, I'm very lucky that that has continued, and she's put up with me for 20 odd years. This is us on our 20th wedding anniversary in Norway, for those of you who don't recognise the flag. And you can see my hair is now much shorter and Bev's no taller, but we are still at least together. So I'm very grateful for that kind of lucky strike that not everybody experiences. I'm conscious of that. Okay, just a kind of very brief career resume. I studied, well I didn't really study, but I went to the University of East Anglia and took a course in environmental science and moved into, I was very interested in the environment and moved, less interested in the science, and then I moved into kind of policy stuff with, in the environmental sector. Initially with a consultancy that doesn't exist anymore called Battersea in Reading, and then I was headhunted from there to work for a large waste management company called Biffa, that you might be familiar with. And I worked in packaging recycling, the European Directive on Packaging Recycling. It was all very exciting stuff. And ultimately I ran the business unit that dealt with that, and it grew to be a £9 million turnover business. So I learned an awful lot about how to manage a rapidly growing business. In early 2002, I started a training course with an American organisation called Coach U, about how to have coaching skills. So there was a kind of long-term aspiration to become a coach, but even in the meantime I found it very, very useful in terms of interacting with others, people who worked for me and with clients and so on. One of the kind of life-changing moments really was going on a course on an individual module on this course that related to financial independence and the fact that we're living at choice, and by having kind of a reserve of cash, then you have many more choices in life. And that started me on a thought process, which has carried on over the last kind of 15 years or so. My coaching business was called Painless Business, so I founded the company, I grew it, I had a business partner, and we had a team of 5 or 6 other coaches around the country, working with people, small businesses primarily, on how to run their businesses. I've written a couple of books on running businesses, the most recent of which is this one. You'll notice there's a pile here. If this pile is smaller at 11 o'clock, I'll be very much happy. You're more than welcome to purchase a copy at the end. I think it's the best book ever written by me. On running a business. My mum loves it. And some of the stuff that we're going to go through is in the book. And then about 15 months ago, I left this business, so it carries on being run by my former business partner. But I exited, and I now operate independently. Still as a business coach, but not under that banner. excuse me, and part of the reason for doing that was a transition that I'm on in terms of heading towards financial independence and early retirement. So this, if you can see that, this is a picture of the motorhome that my wife and I own, and in 716 days, which is just under 2 years, my wife and I will be heading off to for a year travelling in France in that, and then doing further travelling further on, we'll come back to this later on. So that's kind of the plan. So any of you want to work with me, get in quick. Okay? 716 days. Okay, but obviously in that, that's a career spanning, whatever it is, 20 odd years. The pinnacle for me was the second of my talks here for Jennings, where I managed to deliver a subject that is close to my heart, small business, combined with another subject that's close to my heart, which is the body of work created by ABBA. And so I did this talk. So the only person you'll probably recognise in this picture is Donna. Perhaps Christine, who used to run my breakfast, but this was me. And for those of you who weren't here, I walked down into the room and did this talk dressed as, with white boots and everything. Made loads of jokes about the wigs, and nobody seemed to get it. Well, not many people seemed to get it. And then at the end, it was really hot under this wig. I took the wig off, and they were like, "Oh, you're totally bald." Oh, right. They all thought that was my hair. My wife wishes. Anyway, that was the pinnacle of my working career. Okay, and the other thing I do when I do public speaking is I always just mention, is for people who don't know me, there might be people who think they know me because they've seen me on the telly. Depends how much you watch. Crime Watch. But I am not. There is a sort of slight passing resemblance. I have a passing resemblance to the bloke who used to play Dr. Green on ER, or was Goose in Top Gun, or whatever. But I'm not Dr. Green. But this passing resemblance, which has got less and less over the years, because he does still have some here there, has meant that I've become a massive fan of the medical series ER, and that does become relevant slightly later. Okay. So, on the medical theme, does anyone know what the healthy blood pressure is? You know, there's like a number over a number. Do you know what the healthy range is? Okay.
It's about 120 over 80.
Okay, exactly. So 120 over 80. So if you go above 120 over 80, you're considered to have high blood pressure and might be at risk. Does anybody want to know what the lower level is in terms of low blood pressure?
70.
Okay, so 90 over 60 is the... Oh, so 90, this is relevant, stick with me. 90 over 60, so if you're going above 120, you're starting to have concerns about high blood pressure. 90 over 60, you start to have concerns over low blood pressure. In July 2009, my wife went into the Manor Hospital in Oxford for a relatively significant but routine operation. And although there were minor complications, the operation went quite well, but her recovery didn't. And so the afternoon and evening of that day in July 2009, my wife's blood pressure was down here. So well into the low zone, enough for me to be quite concerned, enough for the nurse in the ICU to be quite concerned, and enough for the junior doctor in the ICU to apparently not know what to do. And I have to say, honestly, I thought she was going to die. Luckily, one of us, out of those three professionals, had watched lots of episodes of ER and was able to advise the other two professionals on the appropriate course of action. That worked, and my wife still gets to tell the tale. I can honestly say that was one of the... I would not wish that experience on anyone in the world. Sit there and look at your loved one and think you're going to lose them. But I'm so grateful that it happened to me, because she recovered. We left the hospital, she had a period of recovery, and all is fine now. But that was a massive kind of kip around the face, wake-up call, to say, need to focus on what matters most. So we had an attitude to life where we were building towards a future, and we were trying to enjoy the journey on the way. But this absolutely brought home that I believe we're only here once. It's not a dress rehearsal, and so therefore make this performance the one that you want, and therefore all aspects of life needed to work. So whether that be the amount of hours I worked, whether that be the financial success of the business, whether it was the people I spent my time with, all of that mattered because we're only here once. Okay, and so I hope for you that you don't have to have that kind of experience in order to have that kind of awareness, and that's something I try and share with clients all the time. So, since then, we have made sure that we are building towards a long-term future, but we are also making sure that we enjoy the journey. So it's not just about the destination, it is about the journey. This is us kayaking in front of glaciers, which was pretty cold, but was enjoyable. Okay. So, in order to build this future and to have the success and to be able to do all that you want, obviously, if you're going to be able to do all that you want, the first thing you have to be able to define is what is it that you want in order for you to be able to make it happen. And working with individuals and businesses, it's astounding how many people just kind of bumble through life step by step by step and have no kind of long-term aim in mind. And so one of the things I try and do as a coach is try and pull people out of the day-to-day treadmill and have that consideration of, well, what is it that we want? I don't really, as long as it's legal and ethical, I don't really mind what the answer is, because everybody's different. There are 30 or 40 of us in the room, we probably have 30 or 40 different answers. That doesn't matter, but you need to ask yourself the question. And so, again, I'm invoking you, take some time, go to a nice coffee shop, there's one just across the car park. Probably don't go today, because everybody here is going to be there as well, so there'll be people talking to you. But go to a coffee shop, you can have a moment and a notepad, and just ask yourself the questions about what you want in life. In the round, what do you want from work, what do you want from your relationships, do you want a different relationship, all these kind of things, just what is it that you want, and stop and ask. But obviously, based on this, what matters most in enjoying the journey, ask yourselves that it's not just about existing, it's about living, so what does living look like? So it's not just about things to have, or things that you want to do in 10 years' time, but it's actually what is your existence now and make it enjoyable. Very definitely for me is challenge the rules. So I will be retiring when I'm 48, and that's a bit unusual. And when I tell people that, I'm not attached to being retiring at 48. It's just kind of how the dates worked out. But when you tell people, they're like, well, but retirement age is 65. It's like, well, where did that rule come from? Well, so when they set this pension age in 1908, they decided that 70 was a good time to retire. They then brought it down to 65, and now they've changed their mind and put it back up again. So I won't get my pension until I'm 68, and I think by the time I'm there it probably won't be worth having. But, morning Mike.
Afternoon.
No one noticed you slipped in, it's alright. So very definitely challenge the rules. So don't run to anyone else's, whether it be society or your parents or whoever. Don't follow their rules, follow your own rules, as long as it's legal and ethical. Challenge the rules. And also think big. So Tim Foster's spoken here about becoming an Olympic champion. Penny Mallory's spoken here about becoming the first female world rally car driver. Classic examples of people doing things that should not really happen. It's a very, very small number of people who get to do that. So dare to dream those things. Growing up in a council estate in Wokingham, there is no way I could envisage that I would have done the kind of things I've done so far, let alone the things I'm planning to do in the future. But by thinking big and daring to dream, it's amazing what one can achieve. So, we've done that exercise, and now we know what the future looks like. We're here, and we know what's over there. So it's just really simple, isn't it? You just move between the two. End of lecture. How do we do that? Well, in my world, what we do is we just break down that thing into steps. Okay? So, October 2005, Bev and I finished the London Marathon. That says 5:17 for those of you who are looking. I think they need the calendar to measure our time by the time we got to the end. But we finished. And about 4 years before, I was doing no exercise whatsoever. I moved into my house in Chelsea in South Oxfordshire. Dead opposite my house is a big park. It's about a mile to run around the park twice. And I could barely manage that. Mainly because I couldn't be asked, but I wasn't that unfit, but I just didn't have the kind of motivation or whatever. And so I didn't then suddenly say, right, okay, tomorrow I'm going to run a marathon. I just ran a little bit further each week, each month, whatever it was. And so the body just responded. So I ran a mile, then I ran 3 miles, then I ran 5 miles, then I ran 10 miles. And each time the body just responded and found it easier. To the point when you're doing marathon training, 3 miles and you've barely warmed up, really. Whereas before that was kind of the limit of my endurance. So it's just breaking that down and saying, well, I'm just going to do a little bit, grow my comfort zone, do a little bit more, grow my comfort zone, do a little bit more. That's all you need to do in order to get from here to there. Take it step by step. In the case of a marathon, it's 55,000 steps. And from about 20,000 on, you feel every single one of them, I can testify. and never felt the desire to do it again. But great achievement, can't take it away from you. Another example of kind of step-by-steps is I had, as an adult, I had this thing where I really, really wanted to see tigers in the wild. So this is in the 1990s and early 2000s. I love tigers as a concept. I've seen them on the TV and things. I really wanted to see them in the wild. And certainly then, it's slightly better now, but then their numbers were in steep decline, and there was a risk that if I waited too long, then I might lose the opportunity to do it. So we broke that project down into steps and said, well, okay, you know, if we're going to see tigers, where do you need to go? Well, India's a good place. If you're going to go, then don't go to all the popular parks because tigers are quite shy. So if it's busy, you're less likely to see them. Go to one of the remote parks. And where's David? David will know what travelling in India is like. If you're going to go to somewhere that's remote in India, that's an adventure. So therefore, there's certain things you need to do there. If you're going to going in and out for an afternoon, it's probably not going to be very good, so you need a period of time. All these things added up to a whole project where we just broke it down. And culminating, I took this photograph. So got to see tigers off the back of a jeep from about 6 foot away. Amazing experience. Very lucky. Never dreamt of that when I was growing up in Kansas State. And then the other thing about working out things step by step is to translate make your aspirations in physical. And I don't mean aspire to do things physical. But make the aspirations through. Some people do vision boards or whatever. This is a map of the United States that sits on my kitchen wall at the moment. And so when I retire early in 2020, I'm going to go travelling around France. And then we are, one of the things I've wanted to do, and I used to talk about with my now dead father, and when I was a kid, was travelling across America. And so this piece of string is the route which takes in all the viewpoints we want to see and all 48 of the lower states as it is. Okay, so this is my aspiration. And I don't put this up to brag, although I'm quite proud of it. But I put this up to tell the story of the fact that I had been planning this for years. I had been researching it for months and months and months in quite a level of detail to make sure that we could afford to do it and where all the places, reading all the guidebooks to see where everyone's going and everything else. And what changed enormously is when we had this on the wall and the bit of string joined up, because it just became real. Okay? So whether you are into just writing your goals down, or creating a vision board, or having something else that is a physical manifestation of the thing that you aspire to, in my personal experience, it just made such a difference. And it means that when I sit there at breakfast this morning, or I sit there having my supper of an evening, I can look at this, I can A, get excited about something that might be on the map, and B, I can ask myself whether what I'm doing today, or have done today, has taken me closer to this or not. It makes a difference to me. Okay? So I mentioned luck in terms of my good fortune, and perhaps a misfortune, of my wife and I meeting when we were younger. But luck doesn't always work out that way, and you sometimes don't always get what you want. So one of my wife's bucket list things was to see this, which is a grizzly bear eating salmon in the Pacific Northwest. For those of you who don't know, the salmon run in the Pacific Northwest happens in September. Literally millions of salmon swim up the rivers to spawn, and the grizzly bears know that if they stand in the waterfalls, they are virtually guaranteed to have salmon effectively jump down their throat. Okay? And my wife's a wildlife photographer, or a photographer generally, and she really, really wanted to take this shot. So we went last September to the Pacific Northwest and flew on increasingly smaller aeroplanes until I was like this, 6 foot. I mean, it's pretty my wife was a really nervous flyer. I checked in and said to the check-in lady, can I have a window seat because I'm a nervous flyer? And she looked at it and said, they're all window seats. Anyway, so we went to this reserve where the grizzly bears are. We were there, the grizzly bears were there, and the salmon hadn't read the script. So this is not a picture that we took, but we did take this one. So, for those of you who have never watched it, this is a grizzly bear looking in the water going, where the fuck are the fish? Very hungry grizzly bear. So on the river that we were on, every year there is 1 million salmon going up this river, except for last year when there were 5,000. For some reason the salmon run failed. The reason I kind of illustrate this is the learning for me from that was that it isn't just about the destination, it's about the journey. So we didn't get the money shot, we had no photographs like this, but we did get within a few feet of bears kind of walking past us as we're in in the forest. I have literally seen a bear shit in the woods. And we had an amazing experience, okay? And that's what we have to recognise. Whether or not we'll go back and try and get the money shot ever again, I'm not sure. But we had an amazing experience. So even when it doesn't turn out as you intend, if you're enjoying the journey on the way, it can still be worthwhile. Okay, so other than mine, one of the great business books to read is a book called The Pumpkin Plan. I can't tell you the author because he's Polish and I don't know how to pronounce his name. There you go, well done. Thank you. It's a very, very good book, and the central principle in the book is the pumpkin analogy comes from if you're growing world-class, massive pumpkins, then the thing to do is clear out all the weeds so that all the resources can be focused on the pumpkin plants. Then as the pumpkin plants grow, you pick one or two plants that you think are going to be the ones that are going to produce the best pumpkins, and you clear out all the others so you can concentrate your resources. And then as the pumpkins start to form, you choose one pumpkin per plant, get rid of all the others, so that the plant can focus all its resources on growing that one pumpkin, and you end up with a giant pumpkin. I find this really useful in businesses to help people narrow, because most people who run businesses are relatively entrepreneurial, they're relatively excited by new projects, and so you manage to get them to agree that they're going to go down this route with this product and this customer segment, and then it's like, oh, that's nice and shiny, let's go over here. And you diversify your focus. Sometimes you confuse your marketplace and you struggle. So that's the argument behind the Pumpkin Plan. Very, very good book. Highly recommend it. And it is equally true in life. So if you go through the exercise in a coffee shop of writing down all that you want in life, hopefully for you, that will be a very long list. Okay? But what you will then come to realise is if you try and advance on all those fronts, you may make a little progress. And so therefore you need to trim the pumpkins, come down to a smaller list. So as an example of that, this to me is the coolest car that man can own. This is an Austin A35 van from the late 50s, early 60s. It's been a long-term ambition of mine to own one. And 3 years ago, I was within a weekend of owning one. I'd actually paid a deposit on one down in Somerset. And then as I started to think about the implications of owning a classic car, in addition to a car each of both I own a big motorhome, I just realised that it didn't fit with some of the other things that I was trying to achieve in life. It wasn't the pumpkin. And so therefore I took the decision to renege on the agreement to buy the van and if you pardon the pun, parked the idea of owning it. I've got a bigger laugh for that in my head. But anyway. And so this is just an example of narrowing down the focus. So it might be, in years to come, I'll come back to owning a classic car if circumstances change. But as it stands now, in terms of my personal pumpkin, this doesn't meet the grade. And I guess part of that thing was about the financial stuff. And so therefore, I'm amazed in business and in life to a degree, how many people are unable to have a good handle on the financial sides of their business. And there's some accountants and the like in the room who will understand that. And the thing that I learned from my father's inability to manage money until his dying day was a good maxim for life is always spend less than you earn. Whether that be in business or life, spend less than you earn. Now his argument was, and which he fulfilled, was, well, I might as well go to my grave owing someone money, because that's the last check it'll bounce, kind of stuff. Kind of worked for him, didn't work for people who had to pay for his bloody funeral. But, bless him. Yeah, so definitely, in a business context or a life context, spend less than you earn. And I was quite lucky, when in the mid-90s when I had my first job, they offered me a company pension, which I was fairly sure I didn't want, but I thought it was prudent to talk to a financial advisor to get advice on that. Is there a financial advisor in there? Bruce. Is it Bruce?
Yeah.
Okay, Bruce. So I apologise for the next 2 minutes, okay? I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. If you'd like any conversation about financial advice, it's Bruce, not me. Okay. However, I decided that pension plan wasn't the right thing for me. And the financial advisor who I spoke to spent a very long time giving me all the reasons why that was a bad choice. And then when I was still insistent that it was my choice, he did what was the right thing to do, which wrote me a very, very long letter saying, I have told you this, and this, and you chose to ignore it, so that I couldn't sue him afterwards, which is a sensible thing to do. I think I was right. because I am retiring early at 48, he's still working, but leave that aside. But there's a guy called Mike Head, and he did give me a very, very good piece of advice. And what he said was, you know, you're in your 20s, Bev was in her 20s, you're getting promotions, you're having bonuses, you're getting new jobs, your salary is going to be going like this. He said, get to a level where you're comfortable. And at that time we were living in a one-bed flat, which wasn't hugely comfortable. But when you get to a level that's comfortable, hold your spending at that level and don't keep going. So don't just keep spending any salary increases you get. And the reason for doing that is twofold. One is, that means when you retire at whatever age, then you won't need as much because you won't be used to spending as much money. And you'll have more because you'll have been saving on the way, so the pot that you have accrued will be that bit bigger. And that was definitely the best piece of financial advice he could have given me, and he did, and I thank him for that. And that's been a maxim that Bev and I have kind of stuck to over life. So we've always spent less than we've earned, saved the rest, and because of some stuff that I'll come back to later, that's managed to build up to something that allows me to do what I want to do in a couple of years' time. And I find it fascinating. I had a client once who he was in a business that he didn't want to be in anymore, and he wanted to transition to another completely different sector. So he asked me to help him plan that transition. And one of the things was, well, how much money do you need? Because this new business wasn't going to deliver any profit for about 18 months. How much money do you need in between, so that you can look at funding or whatever? And so his homework was to go away and look at all his costs, cut back to the bone, and come back with a number which was the minimum that he could survive on. So he came back and said, yeah, I've done it. The wife and I have talked, we're going to make a lot of cutbacks, we're going to change our lifestyle, and we've come up with a number of 14 grand. Even by my standards, that's quite a low number to live on for a year. I thought, that's just bonkers. And I said, 14 grand a year? No, 14 grand a month. Oh, and that's cutting back. Oh, okay. Different plan. Kids in private school. Anyway, so yeah, so definitely spend less than you earn, and cap off your spending. And for some of you looking around the room, it might be a little bit late to kind of have this advice in your 20s, but if you know people in your 20s, your kids or nieces and nephews or whatever, please share with them. There's the thing I try and drum into my nieces and nephews, which is if you make those decisions in your 20s, you feel the benefit in your 40s and 50s. Okay, this is another central tenet of my success story, if it be a success, is not sitting in harbour being safe, but doing something that takes a risk. And I love this quote by John Shedd about staying in harbours is not what ships are built for. So for me, the embodiment of this story was, I met when I did my A-levels. I finished my A-levels and I was working on a farm in the kind of summer after the exams and stuff. And I decided I was going to ask Bev out. Okay, now this was a relatively high-risk strategy on a number of fronts. First of all, even by the age of 18, I had a fair amount of evidence that pretty girls didn't say yes when I asked them out. So there was a reasonable chance I'd get slapped in the face, either physically or metaphorically. This is pre-internet, pre-Facebook and all that kind of stuff, so I didn't actually know her home phone number, so I had to ring her at work and in her lunchtime. I thought, well, she might not be in the best mental position to receive this unusual request, but I will take the risk. And then thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, the reason I met Bev when I did my A-levels was because Bev was my A-level maths teacher. So the risk to say no on that account was relatively high. Luckily, in those days it wasn't illegal to go out with former students, as it is now, and after a little bit of convincing she said yes, and we are where we are. But if I hadn't had that little bit of Dutch courage in the pub at lunchtime, picked up the phone and rung her, I wouldn't have had the most significant thing in my life happen. So you have to take a risk. Similarly, she took a risk going out with a then 18-year-old former student and all that kind of brought with it. She probably still is taking a risk. Similarly, when you take those risks, you really have no idea of the ripples that will kind of follow when you drop that rock in the pond. 2005, when my wife and I ran the marathon, we took the risk to kind of, I did do a charity initiative, raise some money for a community that we had encountered in South Africa. So we set ourselves a lofty goal of raising £2,005 in the year 2005. So we did a few little charity things and ran the marathon and all that kind of stuff. And the ripples that have kind of emanated from that little piece of activity mean that the community that we supported in South Africa has now received in excess of £250,000 so slightly surpassing the 2005 goal that we set ourselves, because loads of other people bought into the idea of helping this community and made loads of stuff happen. I've stood up here many a time and talked about the beer festival, which is one of the biggest things that raises money for it, which causes other ripples in the households of Chelsea. That's another story. And so this building is a centre for disabled children, which is in the Kodumela area of South Africa, which would not exist if we hadn't taken that risk and decided to try and raise a small amount of money, which grew into a large amount of money. Okay, so we're here, and our destination is over there, and we're trying to take the steps in between. And one of the things that sometimes befuddles people or confuses them is they can't always see the path. So it's not because there are so many unpredictabilities, particularly if it's a distant event. And so my metaphor for that is driving down a country lane at night in the dark with the glow of your headlights. So you know that the pub at the end of the lane is there, and you might not know exactly how to get there. All you need to know is this bit, because when you get to there, your headlights will illuminate the next bit. Okay? The key thing is for that to work is you have to keep moving. So therefore, as long as you know roughly what over there looks like and the direction you're heading, just start heading in that direction and it will become illuminated as you make the move. And it might be that you start heading over here and you have to course correct, but it will become apparent. My other kind of financial hobby horse is the laws of compounding. So someone slightly smarter than me, Mr. Einstein, said this thing, and I love this quote, which is that people who understand it earn it, and those who don't understand it pay it. So this comes back to the spend less than you earn piece, but also means that small bits of activity, whether they be the financial side or they just be good habits, have a compounding effect over time. So there's a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, which majors on this. And so for me, that means that whilst I know, and have known for some time, that I was heading towards retiring early, I needed to do things every day that took me towards that. And small things that I did, simple disciplines, like, I don't drink coffee, but not buying Starbucks coffee every day in order to save money, or working for myself in order to have a better kind of control over my financial returns, or whatever it might be. Those simple daily disciplines were all kind of positives. And I also knew that looking at Facebook or watching the sport during the day when I was working from home and had no one else to tell me whether I should do or not, were all things that were going to take me slightly further away from that. Now, it didn't mean I never looked at Facebook or never watched sport. Of course it didn't, but it meant I could beat myself up about it afterwards and then try and correct myself. And all those little kind of judgments and choices add up then to a compounded thing over a period of time. Okay. So a good analogy would be for this: if you went to the gym for the next 5 days, then other than sore muscles, you probably wouldn't notice a great deal of difference physically after the 5 days. But if you went to the gym every day for 5 days for the next 52 weeks, by the end of the year you would really notice the difference. And the same will be true in terms of business stuff and losing weight and all sorts of things. Now this is a TV presenter and kind of motivational guru called Mel Robbins from the States. She's got some good TED Talks and things if you're interested. And one of her things is this thing about you're only one decision away from a completely different life. So it's in our gift every day, every moment, to choose whether we're heading towards that final destination or someone over there which is less fulfilling. And she has this 5-second rule, which is not the one about if you drop food on the floor, is it safe to pick it up? It's the one that says we have this kind of evolutionary process in our brains where if our brain kicks in and takes on thoughts that we've taken, it'll probably talk us out of anything that's slightly risky, because that's what's kept us alive for millennia. And so therefore the way to get over that is to just do it and not let that 5-second process hit in. So her thing is like if you want to get out of bed in the morning when you wake up, if you stop and think about it, it's quite warm in under the duvet and whatever, so I'll stay, hit the snooze button. But if you just get up and do it, then it makes a difference. If you're thinking about going to the gym, whether it be in the morning or the afternoon or whatever, if you stop and think about it, you're probably going to talk yourself out of it. But if you just do it, then you'll... Sound familiar?
Yeah,
okay. And so it's just a thing of, bear in mind the 5-second rule, and if you're thinking about doing something that's even mildly unpleasant, just get on and do it. and then you'll overcome that evolutionary inertia that we have built into us. And on a similar vein, Steve Pressfield is an author. I was going to say he writes books, but it's bloody obvious. But he writes kind of fiction-type books based in history. But he's also written this brilliant book called The War of Art, which if you're at all creative, then I thoroughly recommend reading, because it really speaks to the kind of creative process and the challenges. And he has this thing which he calls resistance, so the war is a war against resistance. And this is the thing that we are naturally drawn to instant gratification and pleasure, and therefore we're more likely to do that than some of the kind of long-term growth-orientated stuff, which is probably better for us. And resistance pushes us in that direction, and that's a struggle that we have to overcome kind of daily or whatever in order to progress. And in The War of Art, he has some tips about some of the things that he did in order to be able to write books and be productive, writing books rather than being distracted by Facebook or whatever. And the marshmallows, in case you're wondering what they are, is there's a guy called Walter Mischel who did some work at Stanford University in the late 60s and early 70s, where, well, effectively they tortured children, but they put children in a room with a marshmallow in front of them and said, you can either have this marshmallow now, or I'm going to come back later, and if you haven't eaten a marshmallow, then you can have two. Okay? So they did a study, and then years later they followed up with those same kids and looked at various life outcome measures in terms of educational attainment, body mass index, whether their parents thought they were nice kids, all sorts of things. And the children that were able to delay the gratification and wait for 2 marshmallows did better in life on those measures than the ones who just ate the first marshmallow. So the ability to delay the gratification and go for something that's a long-term investment is definitely something that I think is a success factor, something I struggle with. Oh, sorry, blank moment, that's what that's about. So having a plan. I think I'm a self-confessed planaholic. I love the idea of having something that says this is where I'm going and these are the steps I'm going to go. A spreadsheet king. And also very conscious that as soon as you start doing anything in the real world, then the real world doesn't always follow your script, and so therefore you have to adapt. So the most intellectual or long-standing proponent of that is a German military philosopher who said that no battle plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. That's also been quoted by a guy called Bland, who says no marketing plan survives first contact with the customer, that kind of stuff. And it's very true. So we make these plans, and then we have to adapt and course correct in reality. Because the little thing that I create in my head about how it's all going to work is not necessarily how the universe wants to work. There's also the fact that plans are only as good as the execution that they drive. So having the plan isn't the thing that makes a difference, it's whether or not you do what's in the plan that makes a difference. So my dear wife has often reminded me that I have to actually go out and do something, not just sit there redoing the business. As long as you do your kind of GCSE revision timetable 52 times and never actually do any revision. But then the best proponent of having a plan and reacting to it is the boxer Mike Tyson, who said that everyone can have a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And it is that fact that life throws you curveballs, whether that be unexpected failures of clients. I had a client once who had 5 significant clients. So he had diversified, and they were all about 20% of the business. 4 of them went bust within a year. I had another client whose whole business was on taking tourists to Libya, just before we bombed the shit out of it, being out about 5 years ago. And so literally, business stopped overnight. So sometimes you get punched in the mouth, and the thing to do is, possibly not while you're in the ring with Mike Tyson, but is to get back up again and have another go. Okay, so I've referred to some authors that I've read, and some people are often interested in kind of books on the way. If you want to know the details of these books, then I'm really happy to, if you just email me, info@jamesbutler.org, then I will send you clearly the one you all have to buy before the end of the day. It's this one. If you like sport, I cannot recommend highly enough both Legacy and The Score Takes Care of Itself, which is a book about American football. You don't have to like the sports, you don't even have to like sport, but they are very, very good books. On the business front, The Pumpkin Plan, I've already mentioned, by Mike Miklovich. And Traction by a guy called Gino Wickman, which is a really good kind of systems-based book. I'm very lucky to have been exposed to some investment ideas when I was in my 20s, which have allowed me to build the wealth, I suppose, that allows me to retire early. The book that I read in the 90s, which is a digestible book that's no longer in print, so you'll have to get it second hand on Amazon or other bookstores, is called The Motley Fool's UK Investment Guide. Brilliant book. But then the seminal work in this area is a book called The Intelligent Investor by a guy called Benjamin Graham. If you buy this version of the book, this book was written in the 30s or 40s, but this version of the book has his chapter, and then it has a relatively contemporary chapter updating the kind of stuff as well. And so if you're interested in accruing wealth and investing, then definitely recommend this book. This is the book that Warren Buffett read and followed the principles of, and richest guy in the world who gave his money away, so just saying. I'm not quite at Warren Buffett's level yet, but I'm not working on it, but I'm not at his level yet. I've already mentioned Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. I found this book really stimulating because Derek is a creative guy, and I'm not, as you might guess, from the planning kind of side. And so just to hear it from a different viewpoint was really interesting for me. And it's a really readable book. It's effectively a series of tiny short chapters, almost blog posts, put together. And he will tell you a lot of the things that I have, the exact opposite of everything I've spoken about today, in terms of not having a plan and that kind of stuff. And it worked for him, he became a multi-millionaire. So. And then, it's a bit cheesy, but I find this is actually brilliant. So that, Stephen Covey's, Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, found very similar when I read it in the 90s, and I've tried to live by it, and particularly this thing about beginning with the end in mind and heading in a certain direction. Okay, in summary, Chris will be pleased to hear. The main thing is we start with a choice. So the life that you lead from here on in is your choice. Whatever happens to you, how you react to it is your choice. And so therefore take ownership of that choice. That's what I learned in my teenage years, was I don't want to get to the end of my life and moan about the fact that someone else had organised it in a way that I wasn't happy with. So therefore take control of it, take those choices. Understand where you want to go, so begin with the end in mind, and then live life purposefully to get there. So if you just do daily actions, daily choices that build towards the doing what you want, then you have a much greater chance of doing it. Start now, or at least in 10 minutes' time, and just flip and do it. No excuses. I have a number of clients where they have grand plans, or not so much clients, people I know. Grand plans, and there's always a reason why they haven't yet started. So I'm just going to wait until I've done this, or I'm going to wait until Bobby leaves secondary school, or I'm going to wait until my husband's done this, or I'm going to wait until I've got my MBA, or I'm going to wait until I land that big client, and they spend their life waiting and never moving forward. So just avoid those excuses and just move forward. I don't know if I've mentioned, but you don't have to, if you buy the book that'd be lovely, but you don't have to. If you go to the website, you can sign up to, I have a monthly newsletter email that goes out. That's where I'm going to be blogging about some of the financial independence stuff that I've done, and my travels when they come in 716 days. So if you're interested in that, by all means go and sign up at the newsletter. In the old days I would have had a sheet here, but GDPR that's a bit more complicated, so I'd ask you to go and sign up. And if you want to get in touch with me, my email address and phone number, that kind of stuff is there, or come talk to me. If you have been inspired by the talk and want some help in working out where you want to go and how to get there, very happy to talk to you. Or if you know someone that would benefit from having that conversation, really happy to talk to them. Just get in quick, 716 days. Okay, so I'll leave you with this thing of very definitely dare to dream. Take yourself away, think about how it could be, because I could never have envisaged, when I was growing up on a council estate and waking up, standing here talking to you about retiring early at 48 and doing all the things that I've done in life. I didn't go abroad. I had 2 holidays abroad, both to France until I was 18, and then I've been all over the world, seen some amazing things. I've been lucky enough to do it with an amazing wife, and had an amazing job. All of those things I could never have envisaged at the start. So just kind of think big. Write a plan, bless you. Write a plan, so just whatever it means to live that dream, just have a plan. It doesn't have to be 58 pages, mine's a couple of pages, but have that plan and then you can refer to it and have the compass points of that plan all the way through. So, I started by saying that as a society and as a species, we had more resources than ever before available to us. That is equally true of you as individuals. What you do with it is your choice. As my mother taught me, thank you.
hopefully you can see why we had him back 3 times. Fantastic speaker. Lots of photos, lots of notes going, so brilliant. Any questions?